What's up, guys? It's Toad back with you. If you hear background noise, which hopefully you don't with this directional mic here, but I got leaf blowers out there right now. I don't know what's going on. I live in a complex, so now I can hear it again. It's going to, at the very least, distract me and drill into my brain. Man, I hate it. I hate what happened yesterday with my bets. I am totally distracted, man. I'm late morning on this one because it's a holiday up here. It's Columbus Day, man. Oh, sorry, it's Indigenous Peoples Day now. Maybe if we're celebrating the Washington Redskins and the Cleveland Indians, although I didn't like Washington yesterday, and I do not like Cleveland today, so I will talk about that. NFL yesterday, I mean, what can you do, man? The Patriots, for the first time, their defense just really didn't look good at all. I did not expect that to be the case at all. I expected it to be an ugly, lower-scoring game. Houston put up, by far, I think, the most points they put up this year. Their offense has not been doing that this year, and the Patriots' defense has been like their one capable unit, so I don't know what happened there. Atlanta Falcons, Carolina Panthers, I mean, that was probably closer than the final score looked at the very least. There was definitely a chance there. There were chances for Carolina. I mean, Carolina was hanging around most of that game. They weren't down by more than, like, I don't know, I think maybe 10 at most throughout most of that game, I think. And it reached a point where they were down 8, driving in Atlanta territory in the middle of the fourth quarter, and Andy Dalton threw a crucial interception there. And when they were potentially going in to try to tie the game, or at least attempt a 2-point conversion that could potentially tie the game. So bad. And then I won on baseball to make the day a little bit less bad, although I'm slightly below the break-even point this year again. I'm not going to lie. It sucks. I hate it. After a very small loss on Saturday and yesterday, a loss of basically one unit size, essentially. I lost my unit yesterday, man. Damn it. But then, the Dodgers, I mean, I hate that the Dodgers won, but if they're going to win and piss me off, I'll at least jump on them and win money on it. How about that? All right, let's talk about today's card here. I mean, you guys know I have a Monday Night Football play, but I'm going to start with hockey because I think I have the least to say on this, and I am making a hockey play. It's kind of a market read here, looking at the hockey card today, but we do have some interesting games here. I mean, I'm just going to kind of point out a few things real quick. We do have Boston against Florida. My Bruins have another rematch against Florida. The Bruins actually, I think, swept the season series against Florida last year, but then, of course, lost in the playoffs to them for the second straight year, lost the opening game this year. Bruins looking like the market's against them here, down from minus 140 to minus 135. 81% of the tickets, but 84% of the cash, though. So they're public for some reason. I guess because they've won every game so far except for that opening game against Florida, which, by the way, was the only game that Swayman wasn't in net for the Bruins, I believe. I don't know who's going to be in net for this one, though. It's tough to figure out, even though these are afternoon games, so you should know pretty shortly who the starting goalies are going to be. I look at startinggoalies.com or whatever it is to see who the starting goalies are supposed to be, but you never really know for sure. But Bruins, looks like they do have the cash discrepancy, but they've dropped on the money line a little bit in this one. So I don't know. Then you got Utah Hockey Club is just an interesting story, man, because in their inaugural season, they've started off 3-0, but this is a tough spot for them, I think, man. They just played 2 straight overtime games to beat the Islanders and then the Rangers, and that Rangers game was physical. There were a bunch of fights in that game. Now they're coming off that, and they have to continue this road trip doing the, like, New York, New Jersey triangle here and have to face the Devils. I don't know, man. It seems like a tough spot to me for Utah, but who knows? I mean, New Jersey is public with 80% of the tickets, 89% of the cash on them, though, but the line is also dropped on them from minus 175 to minus 161. So a lot of situations here where the money line is moving in the opposite direction from where you'd expect based on where the cash is. Just kind of bizarre there. And New Jersey has played an extra game over what Utah has because New Jersey started with those Czech Republic games early in the season. I don't think that really matters at this point, though. This is the part of the season where you got to look at the schedule, man, and just try to figure out like what's going on with the scheduling dynamics for these games. And then Pittsburgh, Montreal. I thought this was a little bit interesting. Pittsburgh, I believe they're a 1-2 team against a 2-1 Montreal team, but you see the line here is up from -115 to -123. 94% of the tickets and 97% of the cash on Pittsburgh. So the odds makers are telling you Pittsburgh is actually the better team, even though they have the worst record right now. It's in a very small sample size. Pittsburgh clearly the better team over Montreal. At least the odds makers are telling you that is the case, unless we start seeing something else happen throughout the course of the season. But the public bettors seem like they're not fooled by that, and they're also coming on Pittsburgh, just remembering what happened last year. Basically, they just know Pittsburgh is likely still the better team here, so maybe not that much to gain from that game. And 97% of the cash on Pittsburgh, so they have the cash discrepancy there. I don't know if I have anything else to say about these other games. I mean, the Rangers are coming off that tough upset loss to the Utah Hockey Club, so the Utah hockey team, and they got the Detroit Red Wings coming in. The Rangers pretty heavy favorite, but also heavily public. 92% of the tickets and 88% of the cash. The line has moved up significantly on them from -185 to -208. So I think with these cash percentages, I also think it's a situation where, because those are a reflection of what's happened throughout the entire course of the line being out. So what might have happened is that there were more professional bets on the Rangers at like a lower price, and then they got up to the higher price, and then that kind of stopped, but the public kind of remained on them or something to that effect. I'm not entirely sure. And then you got Islanders in Colorado, and I think the Islanders are starting a road trip, if I'm not mistaken, which is usually a positive type of spot when you start a road trip. Oh, no, they started a road trip last game against Dallas. So they had one home game, then they started a road trip. And they lost, even though that was a positive spot. Dallas, pretty good team there. So the Islanders, I don't know about that scheduling spot there for them, but I think Colorado is probably in the better spot to bounce back. Because, I mean, look at what Colorado's done so far. They're a pretty good team, man, and they've just looked awful so far, giving up 14 goals in 2 games. And one of them, I mean, to Vegas, maybe you can excuse that because Vegas is a pretty good team. But Columbus, I mean, what the hell is going on there? I thought that was a decent bounce back situation for Colorado, and they lose again, probably as a giant favorite to a pretty bad Columbus team. I mean, yeah, -360. So what is going on here? Colorado did outshoot them. They were way more physical than Columbus. They outpossessed them. So how did they lose this game? Don't ask me, man. One of them was an empty net goal at the very least for Columbus there from Monahan. But I don't know how Colorado lost that game despite statistically winning that game at like every major stat there. So I don't know. So this does look like a bounce back spot for Colorado because they are the better of these two teams. But they're down from -165 to -157. 77% of the tickets and 93% of the cash on Colorado, though. So I do somewhat lean to the Colorado side in that one just because they're coming off such an embarrassing loss. But that didn't work out for me when I took the Oilers the other day. But when you have a team that's actually a good team that's coming off an embarrassing loss like that, that does tend to be a spot you want to be on. But my one play in hockey is going to be this mostly a market read, but the scheduling dynamics do look like they set up for it. Ottawa Senators -115 is what I'm going with. It's my boy, man, the former Bruins goalie, Linus Ullmark. Ullmark, kid. He's on the Ottawa Senators now, and I believe he's played every game for them so far, and I think that he's probably going to play again. I think we're going to get both starting goalies in this one with Kemper. Darcy Kemper, I think, is the goalie for the Kings, and Ullmark should be the goalie for Ottawa. And he had one really good game to start out the season, and then he had one not-so-good game in his most recent game. But I looked at this right away, and of course, the huge ticket cash disparity jumped out at me. It was 77% of tickets on the Kings, 84% of the cash on Ottawa. Ottawa's getting a pretty cheap price, down from -120 to -117. Don't exactly know what moved it down a bit. There are some slightly lower money lines out there right now, too, from what I could tell. But I looked at the schedule, and I have to agree with that. I mean, the scheduling spot does seem like it is more of a negative for the Kings here. They're coming off a tough overtime game on Saturday against my Boston Bruins, and now playing a third straight road game. It's not a third road game in 4 days, because that's the type of spot where I do like to fade teams. That's kind of a brutal scheduling spot. They at least had one extra day off there, but still, the Kings coming off a tough overtime game where they were winning a lot of this game against the Bruins, and they did outplay the Bruins in some ways, outshooting them. But the Bruins were the more physical team, as they tend to be. The Kings not quite as physical a team as the Bruins tend to be. Bruins did outpossess them too. So a tough physical game, close game. Bruins beat them in overtime. Pasternak, because of course it's going to be him with more overtime heroics there from him. Bruins' best offensive player there, but a tough loss against a pretty good Bruins team. And then this looks kind of like a sandwich spot because as far as we know, I mean, Ottawa, they have not been good in recent years. So I think the Kings could potentially overlook them in this spot and may look slightly ahead to a Toronto team that they're not great, but they've at least been like a playoff team the last few years. So I could see LA potentially overlooking Ottawa here in this one with that game coming up on Wednesday. Ottawa, I think they're also in a positive spot. I think they're in a bounce-back spot because they came off a pretty ugly loss. As I said, they had a big win in their first game against Florida. I mean, you upset the defending champs. I mean, that's a step-up game for you. You win that. That's a big win, man. So I think maybe what happened here is they were just in a letdown spot after that, having to go to face this lowly Montreal Canadiens team. I know the history around Montreal. I know Ottawa is a much newer team. I think they're an expansion team around the time that I was a kid, I believe, because I actually had some inside baseball here. As a kid, I had like banners for like a whole bunch of different sports teams, sports posters all over my room, and I had a branded trash can in my room as well, and it was Ottawa Senators just because of the novelty of it. I think I said nostalgia by accident last week on one of my videos about Utah Hockey Club. I meant novelty. I'm out of my mind, man. Novelty, the newness of it. So I think that's why I liked that. I was like, oh, this new hockey team, this is cool. Give me an Ottawa Senators trash bucket, man. Yeah. All right. Little did I know that in the future I was going to be betting on them, and Ottawa was going to have the former Bruins goalie on their team. All right. So Ottawa, yeah, I mean, I think this is still like, I don't know. There's somewhat of a rivalry here, maybe just because these teams are fairly close geographically between Ottawa and Montreal. But Ottawa, I think they were in a big letdown spot after that huge win over Florida, the defending champs. So I think they did suffer a letdown spot here against Montreal. But if you look at the stats, it wasn't as bad as it looked. Like, they didn't actually get blown out statistically. Montreal outplayed them slightly, but it was a much closer game than the final score looked. So they didn't play that badly, although Allmark did not have his best game there. But off of that, I think this is a bounce-back spot for Ottawa, man. They're returning home, but it's not off of any sort of road trip or anything like that. They had a quick jump up to Montreal, and now they're coming back home. They got the LA Kings coming in, and they do have a couple days off after this to rest. So I think that also means their focus is going to be fully on this game because they don't really have another game upcoming for a little while, and they're off an ugly performance where they lost as a road favorite, actually, to a pretty bad Montreal team. So I like Ottawa in this spot. Public's coming in on LA because, I mean, LA hasn't lost yet. Well, they lost, but it was an overtime loss to the Bruins. So they're 1-0-1. Senators 1-1-0. Not much you can take away from a 2-game sample size, really, but the public's also just thinking about what they've seen the last few years, and the Kings have been the way better of these two teams the last couple of years. So that's what we got going on there. So Ottawa Senators are going to be the play in that one. And it looks like a big ticket cash split in that one. Then we're going to go to playoff baseball. How about that? I usually don't start with hockey. I usually start with baseball. I'm going to talk about the afternoon game first, even though it's listed second here, which is the Mets and the Dodgers. That's kind of bizarre. I mean, they're not traveling anywhere. Both of these games are in LA, but they played last night. I won on the Dodgers last night. I thought the spot was good. The pitching matchup was in favor of the Dodgers, so I took it. Easy win on the Dodgers last night. Now we got a matchup that looks a little bit less enticing here in this one, let's just say. Mets-Dodgers in Game 2. The Mets have Sean Manaea going, and the listed starter for the Dodgers is Ryan Brazier, which means that the Dodgers are going with a bullpen game. Brazier was the guy that they had as their opener, their starter in Game 4 against the San Diego Padres, when everybody was saying, Dodgers are just throwing the series away. They're down 2-1. They're starting a guy who's not even a starter. Yeah, well, that worked out okay for the Dodgers because they won the game. They're going to try to throw off the Mets hitters here at the very least with a bullpen game. That's what the bullpen game does. You roll out, a bunch of basically bullpen matchups that you think are advantageous to you and try to keep those hitters off guard, basically on their toes. 9-0 win last night for the Dodgers, of course, and looking at the bullpen situation to me looks better for the Dodgers too, because they only had to use 2 relief pitchers last night, whereas the Mets, I mean, I told you Senga was probably not going to last very long in that game, and he didn't last long and he didn't do well, and the Mets tried to kind of bridge the gap here. They used Peterson, who's a guy who was in their starting rotation during the regular season, but the Mets still used twice as many relief pitchers, and they certainly used their bullpen for way more pitches. They used their bullpen for 116 pitches worth, whereas the Dodgers only used theirs for 33. So that's what we got going on there. So Mets bullpen is in bad shape, worse shape coming into this one. So if you forced me to pick a side, I probably would actually still lean to the Dodgers in this one, just because I think the Dodgers have the bullpen rest advantage. I think maybe they have the slightly better bullpen. They have the better offense. And the starting pitching matchup, I think, I wouldn't say that it's in favor of the Dodgers just because you don't know what you're going to get out of the bullpen game. But Sean Manaea, yes, he is the one of these 2 guys who's pitching today who is actually a starter, but his numbers are not good against the Dodgers. He does have a 3.47 ERA this season, 1.08 whip. He's been good in the playoffs so far. I mean, he was decent down the stretch of the regular season as well, with a 3.32 ERA and 35-11 strikeout walk ratio in September. In 2 playoff starts in 12 innings, he's only allowed 3 earned runs, 9 hits, 10-2 strikeout walk ratio, a 2.25 ERA. So he's been good in the playoffs. Even better in his second start, the 7-inning, 1-run performance, 3 hits allowed against the Philadelphia Phillies with a 6.2 strikeout walk ratio. Excuse me. But now, I don't know, man. I mean, we might see some regression out of him here, because against the LA Dodgers, we have a 140 at-bat sample size, and he doesn't do that well against the Dodgers. A 30-11 strikeout walk ratio. I mean, that's about what you expect from Manaea, though. He does kind of walk too many people, but he's allowed a 286 batting average and 859 OPS to the Dodgers, so they've been able to hit him pretty decently. Fairly high batting average and OPS there. Not like exorbitantly high, but still pretty high. And then I don't even think we need to discuss Brazier, just because he's not going to be in there for that long. But my slight lean on the side there would be to the Dodgers, even though the money line's gone down from -145 to -138. They're public because, of course, they're the Dodgers. 73% of the tickets, 88% of the cash on them. But my preferred way to play this is actually the over. And it looks like the line is actually the line has not moved in that direction. It's actually 8.5 with more juice now on the under, but 88% of the tickets are on the under and 84% of the cash on the under. So it looks like a high ticket percentage on the under. I don't understand why. Like, I wouldn't expect the public to ever be wanting to jump in and play an under in a Dodgers-Mets game. It just doesn't make any sense. But less of the cash on the under, because Manaea struggles against the Dodgers, and because I don't know if the bullpen game is going to be that effective another time around, although it could be. My lean would slightly be to the over in this one, but I think the side is probably the better play in this one, which would be to the Dodgers, but I like the other side better in the other game. What's up, Will? I have not been seeing the notification spam, man, but I hope it's not too ugly, because I try to find the actual comments and reply to them. I won't be replying to all of yours. Forgive me. I am going to play in this other game, though, in the ALCS game. And that's going to be on the New York Yankees. Two days in a row, man. I have to play on the number 1 seed at home, and it's a team that I loathe. I'm playing the New York Yankees in a very similar price range to where I play the Dodgers, and for somewhat similar reasons, kind of. I'm going to split this bet half on the run line at -1.5 runs, of course, -1.5 runs at +135, and the other half of the bet -160 on the money line. So that's how I do it. Split the bet half and half, and then if the Yankees win by exactly 1, you still actually win a slight amount of money, I believe, because the bet that loses is the one that you put plus money on. So that's kind of the way I like to split it up there. You could also lay a -1 run line at probably a decent price. Usually DraftKings, I know, has them. I think some other books do have them now as well. I know I'm playing on a public Yankee team here. The line has moved up from -150 to -157. 78% of the tickets and 82% of the cash on the Yankees. So it looks like the line is moving up on them, even though they're going to be public. They are the Yankees. They're a public team. When are you ever going to get value on the Yankees? I mean, I don't know about value necessarily. I mean, I think the price isn't that expensive, and I think this is a mismatch with the starting pitching and otherwise. We see the total has gone down from 8 juice to the under to 7.5 juice to the under. I don't have as much of a feeling on an under, but I'm probably not going to be playing an under in Yankee Stadium in a game where I think at least one of the two starting pitchers is at a big-time disadvantage, and the other starting pitcher is, I think he's probably going to be okay in the game, but there's a chance that he's not going to be. So I would lean to actually the over in both of these games. But public's coming in on the over here at 71% and cash only at 60% in this one on the over. So the market read is certainly not on the over here. It's on the under, and I don't know how I feel about that, to be honest. But the one thing that the under does have going for it is these teams have had a day or two off, so the bullpens should be a little bit rested. Cleveland, I think, has had fewer days off, so they're in a little bit of the opposite rest spot than the Dodgers were last night, because one of the reasons why I played on the Dodgers was because they actually had regular rest, like 1 day of rest, whereas I thought who are they playing against? The Mets? I thought the Mets might be a little bit cold because they won their previous series so early. They had too many days off, in my opinion. But Cleveland is actually the team that's in that situation, as they had to go 5 games against the Dodgers. So Cleveland actually may be in the better scheduling spot, but I think everything else about this matchup looks bad for them. And baseball is a very matchup heavy sport, man. A lot of the handicap is the matchup, most of it. So the scheduling spot maybe isn't in favor of the Yankees, but I'm still going to do this. I mean, yeah, they've been off for a few days, but at the very least, what we could say is that the bullpens are both intact, but that might help Cleveland a little bit because I think Cleveland does actually have the somewhat better bullpen here, although both bullpens had good regular seasons, so I don't know if it's that much of an edge there. I think the Yankees do have the hitting edge, and then this all comes down to the starting pitching matchup, man. If you think the bullpens maybe slightly give the edge to Cleveland, hitting, you give the edge to New York, and looking at the starting pitching matchup, I think this is pretty bad for Cleveland, man. Alex Cobb, I mean, he's a 37-year-old, and I didn't even remember that he existed until Cleveland brought him back late this season. And I'm like, wait, oh yeah, I forgot about this guy, my homeboy from Boston, Mass. His season stats look good, 2.76 ERA and 1.04 WHIP, but I mean, he only had 3 starts, and 2 of them were against the Cubs and the Pirates, and those were his 2 good starts, both at home. On the road, he was not good at all. He had 1 road start against Minnesota and didn't even get 5 innings. He put 10 men on base, allowed 4 earned runs, only had 1 strikeout. Ugly, ugly stuff in that 1 road game against Minnesota. And then his other road game, his 1 postseason game, was a loss to Detroit. He wasn't horrific in the start, but he only went 3 innings, gave up 2 earned runs, 1 walk, 3 hits, and 2 strikeouts. So I think it's not looking that great for Cobb, man. But maybe he's going to be like more of an opener. Maybe he's not going to actually go full starter like workload here. I'm not even sure. I don't know what Cleveland is planning on doing here, but they may be planning on making this a bit more of a bullpen game. But I would expect they're probably going to try to have Cobb go at least 3 because he hasn't pitched less than 3 innings in any of these starts this year. So I would expect they're probably going to try to leave him in to some extent in this one. I don't know for how long they're going to leave him in, but as I said, he's been horrific on the road this season. I mean, in his regular season starts, well, we already saw that 1 regular season start, which gave him a 7.71 ERA, and he had a 450 opponent batting average in that one. Granted, that was only in 1 start, but okay. You might say, well, that was only 1 start. But yeah, I showed you his road start against Cleveland wasn't much better than that. And then looking at his, let's look at his stats over his entire career, shall we? As far as, I looked at his postseason first. And he has made 3 starts in his postseason, but I believe 2 of them were 11 years ago when he actually pitched better. And then he hadn't pitched in the postseason for 11 years until this year when we saw what he did. He didn't do that great against Detroit. So that's all factored into these numbers here in his postseason numbers there, in which he does have a 2.45 career postseason ERA, but most of it is from long ago. And a 1.36 whip doesn't look very good, though. And 277 batting average. Not as good as that ERA would suggest. Then looking at how he's done at Yankee Stadium, let's take a look at that. I took a look at this a little while ago. I don't know if this is only the new Yankee Stadium or if this includes the old Yankee Stadium, but I just saw Yankee Stadium here. I'm like, all right, what are his numbers at Yankee Stadium over his career? It might be a combination of the new and old stadium. I don't know. I mean, similar dimensions in each. So I'll take these numbers as part of the handicap. 4.67 ERA, 1.33 whip, and 360 batting average allowed. Not good stuff. So his numbers have not been good on the road this year in a very small sample size. He hasn't pitched much this year, so I don't think you know what you're going to get on him. He's an aging pitcher. Career numbers not good at Yankee Stadium. He's allowed more than one hit per inning. I forget which column is which. They should show me. Oh, his strikeout walk ratio is actually still good there, though. All right, so that is something, I guess, 25-3. But rest of the numbers not good at Yankee Stadium. And then up against the Yankees hitters that they have currently in Cobb's career. Got to switch that to the Yankees because ESPN still hasn't done it. He hasn't been that great either. A 22-9 strikeout walk ratio. He's allowed 6 home runs to them that are pretty evenly spread out. Still kind of too many walks there. 73 at-bat sample size, a decent sample size there. He's allowed a 288 batting average and a pretty high 955 OPS to the Yankees hitters. So Alex Cobb has not been good in his career against these Yankees hitters. So I think he is definitely at the disadvantage here. On the other side, Carlos Rodon. I mean, he's a guy who's had a shakier career than Alex Cobb has. I'll give you that. Cobb's career stats are actually more consistent than Rodon's, but Rodon's overall, like if you average it out, his career stats aren't horrible with a 3.85 ERA and 1.25 whip. And what we got this season from him was right in line with that, with a 3.96 ERA and 1.22 whip. So you can basically take that for, I think, almost at surface level and say, yeah, that's about how good he is. He's not great. He's not horrible. 195 strikeouts and 175 innings pitched is pretty good. 57 walks, not horrible, maybe slightly high. He's been all right. And then down the stretch, he was pitching pretty well in the month of September, a 2.2 ERA, 34-10 strikeout walk ratio. But then he did not do well against Kansas City. But it is one postseason start, so I don't think it's enough of a trend that I'm going to say, well, I think he's just in really horrible, that I think he's in horrible form now. Because, yeah, he only went 3 2/3. He was very inefficient with his pitches. He allowed 7 hits and 4 earned runs and a home run. He got knocked around by a Kansas City lineup that was struggling, so that doesn't look good. But a glimpse of hope there is that he had a 7-0 strikeout walk ratio in that one. So that does still mean that he was still fooling guys and he wasn't like out of control. So he was just maybe putting too many pitches right over the plate. So he's got to stop doing that. But he seemed to not be doing that in these other recent starts where he didn't allow more than 2 earned runs in any start over the entire month of September. So I think we could maybe expect a bounce back from him. And against Cleveland, we have a 62 at-bat sample size, but it's only against 5 of their hitters, and almost all of it, well, more than half of it is against Jose Ramirez, and he hasn't done horribly against Ramirez. He hasn't done horribly in general against Cleveland's hitters. He's done pretty well against them, actually, except for 7 walks, which are all against Jose Ramirez. I don't know how many of them are intentional walks, but that doesn't look good, but it's a 10-7 strikeout walk ratio, so still pretty bad ratio there, but the rest of the numbers are good. He's only allowed a 210 batting average to the hitters that he has faced and a 612 OPS, and that also means that Cleveland has some hitters who have never even faced him before, so that might be an extra edge to Rodon, because these hitters that aren't familiar with him don't know really what to expect out of him. So I think Rodon definitely has the upper hand in this pitching matchup. So that's another thing that I like here. And then looking at his career stats here, I mean, I think that was his only he's made 2 postseason stats, and they haven't been good. Yeah, sure. I mean, but again, one of them was this year. I don't know when the other one was, but I think we could expect maybe a little bit better out of him. Excuse me. But yeah, he hasn't been good in his first 2 postseason starts. He's been quite bad, actually, which is also why I don't like an under in this one at all, because he does have the chance to not do well. But this is his only stat that doesn't look good, because at Yankee Stadium overall, he has been good over his career. In 25 starts, he has a 3.67 ERA, 140-50 strikeout walk ratio, 1.12 whip, and 238 batting average allowed. He's not allowed many hits at all, 107 and 139 2/3. So he's pitched well at Yankee Stadium, and that is also reflected in his splits this year. I know I'm going into a lot of detail here, but I don't even think I've repeated myself in this one. So, hey, lucky me. I just have there are just a ton of angles or trends or whatever that look like they're in favor of the Yankees. The only one that doesn't really is that he had a bad recent start, and his career postseason in a very small sample size isn't good, but this season Rodon has actually been way better at home than on the road. Major splits there. 3.11 ERA and 204 opponent batting average at home, and on the road a 4.69 ERA and 261 opponent batting average allowed. So pretty significant splits there for Rodon between home and away. So he has been much, much better at home. So that's what I'm looking at there. That's a play on the Yankees. Split play, minus 1.5 runs, plus 135, and minus 160 money line. Half and half on those. And then we'll talk about NFL. I already talked about this game in my NFL video, and I was wrong about where the line was going to move, man. But thankfully, I did take it because I just figured, and like the line was, I was starting to see twos come up, and I'm like, I don't think it's actually going to go the way that I thought it would. So I did take the Jets at plus 2.5. I thought you might be able to get 3 because the public looked like they were coming in on the Bills, but that was not to be. So I'm on the Jets plus 2.5. It looks like it's 1s, 1.5s out there now. The Bills have dropped now from minus 1.5 to minus 1. And it was, as I said, 2.5, almost teetering on 3. And then I think some significant money came in and took the Jets to knock that thing down. But now it does look like the cash percentage shifted to being on the Bills, but I'm not too concerned about that. 63% of tickets and 67% of the cash on the Bills, but I like the handicap and the scheduling spot for the Jets. I'll talk about it again here. I talked about it on my NFL video. You can go check that out as well in case I miss anything here. I might miss something that I said in that video, or I might say something in this video that I didn't say in that video. So, yeah, so we're not going to get the 3, obviously, but I still like the Jets. If you, ask me, I mean, I still think the Jets are probably going to win the game outright. I mean, that would be my guess in this one. So public's still on the Bills. We're still fading the public sentiment at the very least here. And if you don't like the just taking the Jets at like plus 1, 1.5, whatever, or taking them on an underdog money line price, which I don't mind that either, you could potentially tie them into a teaser upcoming for next week because you can get the Bills the Jets 6-point teaser. If you find a 1.5, you can still tease that up to above 7 to the plus 7.5. And in a game with a total that's dropped from 44 to 41. It does look like a decent teaser spot because I like the Jets side anyway, so teasing them up above the 7 doesn't look like a bad idea to me. And then you'd have to find another teaser leg in these upcoming games, which it doesn't look like there are that many games actually that are in that price range this week, but you might be able to find a few. So I don't mind that way of playing it either. As far as the total, it has dropped. 72% of tickets, 84% of the cash though on the over. So it looks like the cash discrepancy is on the over. I'm not sure about that. I mean, most of the indicators to me look like this is probably going to be kind of an ugly, low-scoring game. I mean, if I like the Jets, I'm kind of hoping that it's going to be a lower-scoring game. But you got two teams that I think are going to probably be running the ball here, man. I mean, the Bills, we don't know if James Cook is actually playing, so that's one thing to consider. So if he's not playing, I think maybe that favors the Jets a little bit more. But if he is playing, it probably isn't that bad for the Jets either. And it's still probably looking like it's going to be an under type of game here where the Bills, I mean, I know they have Josh Allen, but their offensive schemes have completely changed this year because they don't have Stephon Diggs anymore. They don't have Gabe Davis anymore. So they've switched to a more run-heavy offense, very run-heavy, actually. So they look to do that first. So that kind of would lend itself towards a more slow-paced, lower-scoring game. And the Jets, they haven't been running the ball as much as they should, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But if they run the ball, it's going to make sense in this one because the Bills are worse at defending against the run than the pass. So you want to try to attack that Bills defensive weakness there, which is more so against the rushing attack. The Jets have the man to do it, man. They have Breece Hall, so I don't know why they're not running the ball more, especially to kind of take the load off of Rodgers, and it can open up more things for Rodgers in the passing game there. So you run the ball more, you're going to make your passing game look better. You need a more balanced attack, man. So the Jets do at least have a really good running back. So they do have the offensive weapons and capability to run the ball against a team that doesn't have a great rushing defense. So that's what the Jets should be doing in this game. And if that's the case, I do think it's going to be a more under type of game here. I like the Jets side for a host of reasons. One of them being that this is the rematch of the Aaron Rodgers injury game. And that was a Monday night game opening week last year. And Aaron Rodgers got injured almost right away. So I think Rodgers is going to be pumped up for a rematch of that game that he got knocked out of. The Jets, I think, are going to be pumped up for that reason. And, Yeah, it's an exact rematch. It happened at this stadium against this opponent at New York at MetLife Stadium, so that looks good to me. The Jets actually wound up still winning that game, by the way. Not a lot of people remember that, so I don't know. I don't think it's going to be a revenge spot for the Bills here, though, because the Bills, I believe, killed the Jets in the other game they played at Buffalo. You can go look and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. But speaking of MetLife, Bills have Josh Allen. Josh Allen in his last 2 games at MetLife is 0-2 straight up, and he has 1 touchdown and 5 interceptions in those 2 games. So Josh Allen playing at this stadium against the Jets, the 2 road games last 2 years, he's been awful. They've been a couple of his worst games, and with fewer receiving weapons on his team now, that might be maybe exacerbated a little bit. He's Josh Allen, so I don't think I expect him to be as bad as he was in those 2 games, but his numbers against the Jets have not been good, and he does have fewer receiving weapons now, but the Bills are going to be running the ball more, so I don't know. But Josh Allen, I believe he does do a little bit better against man coverage, though, and the Jets are man and cover 1. I think the Jets, actually, Allen, I believe, does better against man and not so well against cover 1, and the Jets play a lot of man and some cover 1, so you might see the Jets maybe throw some cover 1 at Allen to try to counter him, but the Jets have been able to counter him in those home games, at least the last 2 seasons, like I said. But we all know what happened this week. The Jets fired their head coach, Robert Saleh. He's gone, and their defensive coordinator has now been elevated into the head coach role. So the Jets have been a defensive team. Saleh is a defensive coach. So I don't really see the defense taking a step back because their DC also defensive minded. I mean, they're still going to use his defensive schemes, I would have to imagine. And he's up in the head coaching role. They brought some other guy up into the DC role, and they demoted Nathaniel Hackett, who was the OC. He's still there, which I think they didn't want to fire him because he has a good rapport with Aaron Rodgers, but he's been demoted, and they elevated somebody else into the OC role. And I think all of that could spark the Jets, man. I mean, I talk about it in the NFL, the fired coaching situation. The fired coach situation tends to be a spot where the team gets fired up when their coach gets fired. So it tends to be a positive because the team, number one, maybe they didn't like that coach and they're going to rally around this new coaching staff and they want to play well, but they also want to play well because they don't want to look like they were the problem. They want to say, look, the coaching was the problem. We've gotten rid of the problem. Us players, we're not the problem. So that makes the players want to play better as well. So I think that all could help. And the Jets, like I said, they've just not been using their offense correctly, dude. And their offensive line has also been bad, but they have one of their key offensive linemen, I forget his name, but one of their key tackles, I believe, has been out for the last couple of weeks, and he's coming back. So I think that could help alleviate the pressure that we've been seeing on Aaron Rodgers the last couple of games. So I like all of that as well. I think the new OC is just going to change the scheme, man, because the Jets have been really putting the load on Aaron Rodgers. I mean, I know he's Aaron Rodgers. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame, whatever, but he's an aging quarterback, and they have such a good running back. I think they need to be taking the load off of Rodgers a little bit, and they should be a more balanced offense and doing something completely different offensively. So hopefully that's what we're going to see here, and hopefully we'll see a better offensive performance out of the Jets with these new schemes, and I think we might. And Aaron Rodgers, he's really good against cover 2, and the Bills run a lot of cover 2 pass defense schemes, so that might help Aaron Rodgers as well, because Rodgers has been up against some more difficult matchups recently, man. That's the other thing about this game. The Jets, they have not really faced an easy schedule as far as the defenses. Like, none of these teams are really poor defensively. Even the teams that are really bad offensively, like, yeah, they face Tennessee, New England, Denver. Those teams are all bad offensively, but none of them are bad defensively. They all have pretty good defenses. So the Jets offensively, I mean, their offense has been bad. Like, I'm not going to make excuses for how bad the offense has been, but they've faced some pretty good defenses pretty much in every one of these games, and their offensive schemes just haven't been right. So I think that has something to do with it, because they have good players on offense, man. I mean, Aaron Rodgers also has good guys to throw to. Garrett Wilson is a stud. I mean, he's still there. They got Lazard there, who he has rapport with from being Green Bay. I mean, they got a lot of decent players there on that offense, and of course, Hall at running back. So I think we're going to see a change here. And the Jets, I mean, yeah, they beat most of the teams they were supposed to beat, except they had that lapse against Denver in a weird, rainy game. I mean, the Jets defense still really showed up in that game and held Denver way down in that game. The Jets defense has been really good outside of the San Francisco game, basically. Other than that, the Jets defense has been one of the top defenses in football, and I don't see why that won't continue to be the case. It was the case last year, too. This is a very good Jets defense. So I think that will continue to be the case. It's just that this offense needs to change, and I think these coaching changes might be the spark that they need to get some offensive production. And like I said, in these last two games, Denver and Minnesota have both been pretty good at defending against the pass, especially, I think. So that makes the Jets' offensive woes look a little bit worse as well. And the Jets have not been doing that well against pressure schemes. Buffalo is not a blitzing defense, so that might also take the load off of the Jets a little bit, where their offensive line has been struggling a little bit. Aaron Rodgers hasn't been doing that well under pressure, really. So the Jets just faced two blitz-heavy schemes in Denver and Minnesota. Now they're going to be facing a less blitz-heavy scheme against Buffalo, so I like all that as well. So I think the Jets are probably not as bad as we think they are, and the Bills may not be as good as we think they are. I mean, the Bills are off to a hot start, scoring just at will, basically. But look at the defenses they did that against. Arizona, Miami, and Jacksonville. I mean, that was a Jacksonville team that just got lit up by Caleb Williams. I mean, come on. Like, I'm not saying that Caleb Williams is as bad as I thought that he was, but I don't think he's as good as he looks right now either. So these games are starting to look less impressive for Buffalo, all right? I mean, those three teams can't play defense. And then once they finally face teams that can play defense, yeah, they didn't do as well against Baltimore and Houston. Those defenses were able to slow Buffalo down. And, of course, Buffalo's playing another good defense here in the Jets, and it's a third straight road game. And they're coming off – that was a pretty tough battle against Houston, man. So they're facing a third straight physical defense in a third straight road game. So the scheduling spot doesn't look very good to me for Buffalo here. It might be better if Buffalo was able to win against Houston, but still, either way, that was a close game all the way down the stretch. So I think that's the type of game where you almost win. It could hang you over into this game against the Jets, man. And Buffalo, of course, the last few years, Buffalo's been the better team over the Jets, and they've had the upper hand over the Jets. So I think this game means more to the Jets for all the reasons that I just stated. So I like this better. And the Jets do have a little bit of extra rest, not much, but the Jets played Sunday morning in London last week. That doesn't mean the Jets had to come back from London, so maybe the extra rest doesn't help that much, really, because they had to fly back and readjust to the Eastern time zone. But the good thing about that is that teams that come back from London, usually they get a bye, but they're allowed to request that the NFL doesn't give them the bye that week. They're allowed to request that they get the bye some other week because they think it might be more advantageous to have like a bye later in the season, which usually it is. When you have like a bunch of injuries, you usually want the bye at that point to try to get healthy. So the Jets requested to not have a bye this week, I assume, so they do not. So they're playing right away. But teams that are in that spot, it's counterintuitive. You would think the teams returning home from the Jets that have to, from London, like the Jets are, you'd think that they wouldn't do that well having to return from across the Atlantic Ocean and playing the next week. But that's actually not the case. They actually do play pretty well, actually. They play better than you would expect in that game because I think they just step it up again because they know it's kind of like I don't know why that's the case, but it's maybe it just helps them refocus or whatever. It doesn't, I mean, it seems counterintuitive even to me as a handicapper because it seems like it's like a return home spot from a more significant road trip, but whatever it is, that tends to not be the case. So maybe it's just that the team returning home from the road trip tends to be undervalued in the market, so you can find more value on them. Maybe that's the case. I don't know. But I like the Jets. I don't know if there's anything else I was going to add there. I think I added a little bit more than I did on my Sunday NFL video from Saturday night. So, New York Jets. Oh, excuse me. I just looked at the Bills' upcoming game against Tennessee. I was just going to look at this real quick. But, yeah, New York Jets is going to be the play there. It's at +2.5 for me. But +1, +1.5, I don't mind it. I do like the Jets to actually still win the game. So, take from that what you will. Decide what you want to do there. So that's going to do it for me, man. A long morning video here on a holiday Monday. We got those 3 plays. Afternoon hockey, that's coming up in a few hours. Ottawa Senators -115. Major League Baseball, early evening. Yankees. I'm playing on 2 New York teams, man. Yankees -1. And I don't like the other New York team. Oh, man, New York. New York's got New York, my rivals. They got a lot of, well, only the Yankees are my rival, really. I don't really have anything against the Mets. 1986, I was a baby. It doesn't really matter. So I don't hate the Mets. I only hate the Yankees, and I don't hate the Jets. I actually like Aaron Rodgers. I kind of like the Jets. I don't hate the Giants either. And the Giants played last night, so New York all over the place. So the only team I really hate is the Yankees, and they're the only other New York team that I'm betting on besides the Jets. -1.5 at +135 on the run line and -160 on the money line for the Yankees. Excuse me. Split bet there, and I got the Jets +2.5, and I still don't mind it at +1.5 or whatever. And like I said, play the money line on it if you want to. You can tease them up and hook it into some other teaser leg. I don't mind that either. Thanks for hanging out, Will. I think it's been only you. Have a good one. I'm Tower Gang Toad, of course. Follow the Tower Gang podcast, the most hilarious podcast out there, every Wednesday, 9-11 p.m. Eastern. Check it out. And subscribe to the Patreon, patreon.com/TowerGang. You get live pre-show, post-show, bonus content there. You get the Telegram to hang out with us, and that's going to do it, man. Have a good one. Let's have a good Monday. Let's get some wins. Let's get back on the right side. Peace.